Hello, hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Not too bad. We're in the final stretch.
Yeah, you made it. Congratulations.
Yeah. How's your morning going?
Well, I'll tell you what, I haven't been up for more than 24 hours. I've been up for about one. So, pretty fantastic. You look about as good as you did 12 o'clock last night. So,
Yeah. Uh, third win time or whatever.
that's fair.
Um, Let me drag Steve back in here. I guess he got kicked out. All right, move this over here. Present that. All right,
Hey,
Steve's back.
Hey, how's it going?
yeah, I don't know. I got binned. Good timing, I guess. At least I got to see the whole presentation before it kicked me out. But
One second, I got
I think my
share.
whole internet went down. I've switched to the backup internet. So
Ah, yes, the backup internet.
Got
First world problems.
reformat this here.
well, it doesn't cost very much these days, does it? So
Oh, I can see the chat. Hey, BB, how's it going?
Screen capture. We're going to capture Chrome.
Perfect.
See if I can make this look a little bit better.
See, the only thing that's
There
awkward
we
about
are.
doing presentations like this is I've always told people I hate building decks, and it's mostly just client decks for some reason. It's incredibly frustrating for me, but presentation decks, pretty easy actually. Big fan.
Well, I'm excited for this one because I need to learn what I'm doing wrong with Shopify.
Yeah, I need to hear about this. I actually spent the last 15 minutes Googling around to see what people really find wrong with Shopify. So hopefully we'll get through this deck, and then you guys can basically tell me why you hate Shopify.
well, I think there's just been a frustration with it because it's the lowest competition niche we've ever done anything in, and it's the only site we've had that just hasn't performed at all. So either it's Spotify or we've just completely lost our minds on the site or something. So
That's fair.
we'll find out, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Do
Excuse
you want
me,
me to whip
gents.
through
I'll
this
be back.
deck, or how do you want to?
Yeah, I got it up, so I'll just I'll follow you through it. Go through the slides, and just remember there's the 10-second delay on YouTube. So even if it doesn't look like I'm doing anything, I'm doing my best to keep up.
All right, perfect. Cool. Well, so we're going to talk about the big crazy world of e-commerce SEO. I'm even going to this title slide has some speaking points on it, honestly, because e-commerce SEO is potentially the most challenging style of SEO. I would say any kind of dynamically driven website is definitely the most challenging style of SEO. So that would be like real estate. If you're in the real estate nation, you work for one of the big brands, or you work with like a Trulia or a Zillow out of the States, or a Remax or Royal LePage in Canada. I'm sure there's other places internationally, but anything that's dynamically generated has a ton of challenges to it. And I think there's a lot of lessons that you kind of get working with any dynamic website. So like I learned a lot actually about e-commerce from working with Remax Canada over here, who we've been helping out for quite a while. So they're great, and it really kind of communicated over well to e-commerce. But I'll pop over to the second slide,
Okay.
and so I'm Troy Fawkes. You can tweet me at Troy Fawkes. These slides are available at dg.agency/24 hours of SEO. And I think they're,
Awesome.
I'm not sure how you're going to share those after, but that's fine.
Eventually, we're going to break the entire show down into hour-long segments, and everything. If a speaker supplied a deck or slideshow or whatever people call it, that'll go out with the segment. So as long as you go to the 24 Hours of SEO website, that's in the YouTube description, and make sure you register so you're on like the mailing list to get the videos and stuff. Otherwise, you're probably not going to get them. So.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. So I'll pop over to slide 3. So really quickly, I don't really like talking about myself too much, but
Okay.
I run a local agency called Delta Growth. I actually so I heard a bunch of people talking about Wicked Fire and affiliate marketing and stuff like that when this thing started yesterday, and I tend not to mention that in my presentations, but I definitely did do affiliate marketing. That's actually how I got into it. I sold what was it? Leads, I guess, to dating websites, right? And it was
Okay.
I remember what it was. It was Senior People Meet. And that's
Okay.
what it was. And I did it through Facebook ads. So I did paid advertising before I did SEO. And I learned a lot there. And I learned a lot about making money off of it, sacrificing or risking your own cash.
Yeah.
And that was a great kind of lesson, I think. But recently I've been into, past 5-6 years, I've been into SEO and conversion rate optimization. And I've done that actually through a bunch of different agencies. And after I finished working agency side, so I started as a junior employee, worked my way up to managing the enterprise teams. And then I went out and I trained a bunch of other local agencies. So after that, I founded Delta Growth, just because I wanted to. You always kind of you work in your situation. You say, man, I wish I could do this better, differently, at least, more similar to myself. So that's kind of what I was trying to get to with Delta Growth. Pop over to the next slide there. And Delta Growth is really simple. We're a specialist agency, so we do SEO, paid advertising, and conversion rate optimization. So we don't do anything fancy. We don't go out. Technically, we do local SEO and anything else that kind of fits into SEO. But we're not going to go out and be your business agency. I will not develop or design a website for you. I will not do project management on that. I hate subjective anything. It drives me insane. Yeah. And we work with a lot of partners. So Gale Partners, a little bit of Climax Media, Pounding Grain. So these folks are all business agencies, creative agencies. In the past, I've worked with BBDO and Publicis. Cool. So they're awesome to work with because they have frequently tried to build internal teams doing this kind of stuff, and it either hasn't worked out or it didn't scale quickly enough for their clients. So they pull us in, and it's really fun. You get to work on bank money.
Yeah, that's really cool because I know other people that work in the traditional advertising field, not with BBDO, but it's something that traditional advertising agencies, even at huge scale, just struggle to get a grasp on stuff like SEO, and they try to build teams, but they always seem to end up bringing someone good in and just handling it and sticking out. What they're good at is creative and buying media.
Yeah, exactly. And you can learn so much from them too.
Mm-hmm.
I pop into Gale Partners quite a bit these days, and they're really data driven. So they're building they're doing a lot of projects right now. I can't really talk about them, but they do a lot of really data driven projects. And they've got a bunch of models that they use to kind of build this out. The conversations they have. If we do a search slide, it's usually a really interesting part of a larger deck, but it is a part of a larger deck, right? We do I'll do a huge, what I would normally have is a 70-page audit, and that fits into 6 slides in their presentation, right? And it's kind of frustrating because you're like, damn it, what I do is important, pay attention to me. But at the same time, you look at the rest of the stuff and you go, okay, yeah, no, I can see why you would build it out that way, and that makes a lot of sense. So it's a fun experience. But yeah, let's pop over to slide 5. So we're going to start talking a little bit, really, really, really briefly about technical SEO for e-commerce. And I know that we've got a varying set of people listening, I guess. So small business, medium business, and there is probably one person who represents an enterprise who's on. But I actually do a lot of work with enterprises, and I think the knowledge that you get from that, you can distill it down into to how small businesses should operate as well. But you tend to approach it from the large business side first, and then we kind of drill it down. So if we pop into the next slide there, for technical SEO, so if we're on slide 6, for technical SEO, there's 3 major points that I see everyone has problems with. Absolutely every single person has these problems. And then everything else gets really, really niche. So example of something that's super niche that most people don't have to deal with. I was working with a certain real estate company that I've named already, but on a Friday night, they decided to canonicalize all of their city pages. So they were ranking for things like Toronto real estate, any kind of city, whatever, plus real estate on specific pages for that. They canonicalized those pages to their province pages. And anyone who's ever worked in real estate knows that about 80% of their traffic should be coming from the city search pages. And they all just disappeared on a Friday night, right? That's a technical SEO issue, right? That's an indexation issue, but it's a technical SEO issue. And it's something that we really had to solve really quickly and then try to figure out how to get everything indexed. And this stuff happens on a weekly basis for large sites, for big e-commerce sites. And it's always different no matter what you look at. But every single e-commerce site has to deal with these three issues. And so that's site architecture, duplication, and indexation. So for site architecture, honestly, most static websites mess this up. Like pretty much every website I've ever looked at has not done this correctly. And we can get into the details of navigation, crawl depth, interlinking, but it's kind of nice to get a full grasp of it from like a heuristic perspective. So I'm sure you've all seen this before. You've all kind of get this to some extent. But if let's say you've got a ton of authority, you've got all of this authority on your domain. Usually the distribution of authority is pushed towards your homepage. So if you were to imagine your authority as like a web, the center point in the web is your homepage, and it's this little point, and then surrounded by some other points out into the web, and those are your first-class citizens or your first-class pages, and those are usually site-wide links. So if you were to look at all the pages on your site or on your homepage, for example, and you look at your header navigation, including drop-down menus, and your footer navigation, those usually make up what are called your site-wide links, which means every single page on the site links to those pages, and so you get your second-class or your first-class citizens there. And then outside of that, so let's say you've got an index page that you link to, like a services page. So you click on that, brings you to a services page, and then you have links to some of your services. But those aren't linked site-wide. So those are actually second-class citizens, and those are much, much smaller points on the web, a little bit further out. And the points represent how much authority you're passing to those pages. So usually if you look at that architecture, what you're expecting to find is your homepage is your homepage. You do as much as you can with it. Your first-class citizens need to be really valuable pages. You can't have your first-class citizens be 8 brand pages. They have to be like 1 or 2 brand pages, and then your primary services or what have you. So same applies to e-commerce. You need to be able to do this as well, but it's so much more complicated because for e-commerce you might have thousands of categories and subcategories that you need to somehow link, right? You've maybe got an incredibly popular product that you want to pass authority to, and you can't necessarily do that with just site-wide navigation and that distinction. So one of the major issues for e-commerce SEO is just this navigation piece and this site architecture piece. And instead of worrying too much about best practices, because it's going to be impossible to get through a site architecture presentation even if we just did that in an hour. What I would do is I'd take that heuristic, that idea of the web, and I'd say, what are my most valuable pages? And then with those, I would try to get my first-class citizens, my second-class citizens kind of prioritized, and then I would look at my website and say, okay, this is how I will structure the site, how I will change the navigation. A great way to do that from a practical perspective is take Screaming Frog or Deep Crawl, any kind of crawler, start it at your home page, let it run all the way through, and then they usually have a crawl depth column, and they'll talk about how far away you are from the home page. So those are your first-class citizens, second-class citizens, and then further and further out. Your best pages should have a crawl depth of 1. Right, your second best pages should have a crawl depth of 2 or more, right? That's kind of how it gets structured, and that you can just kind of look at what happens in Screaming Frog and then update as you go. The next big thing from a technical SEO perspective is duplication. So, oh god, duplication. Duplication is pretty nuts. There's all sorts of stuff you can do wrong with e-commerce SEO. So this is why someone was asking me, Shopify versus like a boutique e-commerce platform. 100% Shopify, because they handle all this stuff, right? There's a lot of things that can go wrong with SEO, and unless you've actually spent some focus on it, you're not going to get it. So, for example, there's a distinction between pages that you redirect and pages that you canonicalize. And then which pages do you redirect or canonicalize, for example? So my usual distinction is a canonical, if you're going to canonicalize a page away from its current URL, that page has to be useful to the user already. So a good example is, let's say we go to the Amazon store and we look at shoes, but then we do a search or we sort the page from like alphabetically or from best to worst rating. The URL likely changes to like sort by whatever. So that page has a user experience impact, but it doesn't actually, it's not something we want to rank for anything, because at the end of the day, that's mostly just duplicate content. So in that situation, we'll canonicalize to the shoes page, and that's it. We'll leave it there. But what about like www.amazon.com versus amazon.com, right? Like, do we canonicalize it? Does it have a user experience perspective? No. So we just redirect that. And there's a couple different situations in which we'll do that. Another good example for e-commerce might be if you got a trailing slash versus not a trailing slash, or if you can list your products as like a numbered, like just the SKU, for example, versus the name of the product, and for some reason your CMS does that, your e-commerce platform does that, then we would redirect it to the proper version. We don't have to just canonicalize that. It serves no UX purpose to have both of those URLs. Another issue with duplication, especially on a larger scale, is internationalization. So internationalization is it's complex, especially since the way it's formatted right now from a recommendation and best practices perspective is really intense. So basically the issue here is, let's say you've got Amazon.ca and you've got Amazon.com. Amazon.ca could be in English or French, because Canada is English and French. Amazon.com, I'm not sure if they do this, but they should probably have English and Spanish, right? And so those are some issues, because what if you've got the same product in English in the US and in English in Canada, right? So those are duplicate pieces of content. So what we want to do is say, okay, this is English for like Spanish speaking in the US, right? Or this is English for English speaking in whatever, in Canada. And the way to do that right now is using rel alternate tags. And the worst thing about this is, if you're Amazon or FedEx, who I actually did this for, let's say you're FedEx, FedEx Local, you might have 120 different variations of a page. So try to wrap your head around that for a second. You have to use rel alternate to talk about every single page that is some type of alternate to that, right?
Sounds annoying.
Yeah, and imagine the database. Like, you have to have a really clean database.
I'm frustrated with like 20 products on Shopify.
Yeah, right?
Well,
and
it's not
I
the
was trying
products
to
that
make
are causing the problem.
and I'm trying to make this recommendation to to FedEx, and I'm like, I know you have like 7 different marketers who are responsible for all the different websites, like marketing teams responsible for different websites, but I need you to make sure that the pages stay in lockstep,
Right.
more or less, so that we can do this and run it on a database level, and that's not going to happen. I have a buddy who works over at Staples, and he's trying to do that as well, but Staples is owned by multiple business units. Right, they've got multiple actual different companies own different Staples internationally. So Staples Canada, Staples US. I'm not sure if they're owned by the same company right now, but they're certainly not owned by the same companies outside of that. So how do you stay in lockstep with that? So that gets really complex, and you have to find some workable solutions around that. Some other issues with duplication are content management and zombie pages. I'm going to skip those because there's some really cool stuff in the content section, so we're going to get to that. But lastly is indexation. So for any large dynamic site, indexation becomes really important. There's a couple things that we do differently in dynamically built websites, especially for enterprises, than what you would do with small business. So for example, if someone told me my indexation rate was only 95%, and I was working with a 20-page website, I wouldn't care. Like, that's a joke. Why are you telling me this? This isn't an audit. Like, get out. Right? I don't want to hear from you. I'm not paying your budget. I'll take you to court. Like, I don't care. This is stupid. Right? But if you go to like Remax Canada and you say, we increase your indexation from 85% to 90%, like, that's
over like
actually,
1 million pages. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's actually really good. So I'm working with Buns here in Canada. Do you guys have Buns out there? BUNZ?
Not out here, I don't think.
No.
I haven't heard of it in America.
Okay.
But
yeah,
I'm
so
not
it's
super familiar with real estate, but I haven't heard of it.
No, so
I've
they're a
used like
trading
Zillow
platform.
and Trulia and
Yeah, these guys are a trading platform, so they do like in-kind trading.
Okay.
We
So
barely have Remax over here, let alone anything fancy.
yeah, I don't think Remax is doing especially well internationally right now, to be honest.
I guess not.
Otherwise, you'd know, you know.
Yeah.
But I'm working with Buns a little bit, and they're doing. They built their website in, I think it's React, and they initially had they were indexing fairly well, and then they had a bunch of issues. And I think they're back up to indexing fairly well right now, but it's because they built the website in React, and there's a bunch of issues that you need to make sure you address there. So indexation becomes really important, making sure you get all this stuff done properly. So making sure your sitemaps are great, making sure your robots.txt file is done fine, and handling dropped pages. Because in e-commerce, you're going to have products that sell out, products that you don't carry anymore, all that kind of stuff. And so for those, generally what we do is we just redirect any request for those pages to the class page. But when I say the class page, I mean the category page just above where the product was. So if it's Nike men's casual shoes, whatever, and then you've got the actual product, you redirect any request for the product up to the class once it's being dropped. So that's kind of how we handle those issues. But technical SEO, like I said, is really case by case. So I'll be happy to help chat with any questions in that if they've got like specific ones. But we'll pop on to the next slide there, slide 7. If you've ever heard of deep crawl and never had a chance to use it, this is a good chance to use it. If you've got over 1,000 pages, they're all built dynamically. You've got a good system of classifying the pages. Deep crawl is fantastic. So deep crawl is basically the screaming frog for enterprises, for dynamically generated websites and enterprises. And one of the things that deep crawl does that screaming frog does not do is give you trended reports. So let's say you're running a crawl on an e-commerce platform and you want to see the first 100 pages, like product pages within a certain category. You can actually set up classifications of pages and say crawl only 100 of these like style of pages, and then give me a report on it that's ongoing. So you could keep this report for years running, and you can show an improvement in indexation and decrease in errors for all product pages, right? Or all shoe style pages, all category style pages, or all facet style pages. And that way this report runs and you get notified of massive technical SEO issues that you would never have been able to find if you had been manually crawling the site over and over again. So deep crawl is fantastic. I guess we'll pop off to the next page there, slide 8. Okay, this is my favorite part about e-commerce. Technical SEO is awesome, and I'm a huge nerd about it, and I think it's all great. But being able to talk to other people about stuff, for me, it's categories, facets, and product pages. Have you guys heard about facets? Is that something that is it common parlance for you too?
It's not for me, but I'm very much not a technical SEO, so.
Okay, so this is a content play. This is like a keyword and content play. So it's really interesting. I think it really kind of helped me pull out some more value of even completely different businesses. And I'm going to give some examples from BMW and the automotive industry when we're talking about e-commerce. And a lot of people are going to go, that's ridiculous. Automotive is not e-commerce, but I'm going to prove you wrong. And I'm going to prove them wrong, hopefully. I need to get some automotive companies doing this before they all die. So if we pop onto the next page here, if I'm actually going to define e-commerce SEO, generally what I'll say is e-commerce SEO is any strategy that applies to businesses with products that easily fit into categories, into a category hierarchy, and they have multiple facets. So we'll talk about that if we can pop over to the next slide. We're going to use the automotive industry, and we're going to talk about e-commerce. And this is going to make a whole lot of sense if we move down a little bit. So let's go to page 11, slide 11. So let's talk about category pages really quickly. Category pages are the most obvious page in e-commerce, one of the most obvious pages in e-commerce. They are a hierarchical, segmented structure of pages. So, for example, you could say that, like for clothing, you would say either I'm going to buy men's clothing or I'm going to buy women's clothing. And I get that maybe in 2018 that's not a clear distinction, but to be fair, That's what we're doing with Amazon right now. For BMW, we have the same type of hierarchical segmented distinction. So you could say, for example, I'm looking for a sedan versus I'm looking for a van. Those two things aren't the same. You can segment them out. All products that are sedans are not vans. All vans are not sedans. So great, that's your category hierarchy. But then they kind of push down as well. So you can have men's clothing, men's shoes, and then men's sneakers. So it's a hierarchy that kind of drills down. And BMW does this. I don't think I need to talk too much about the keywords that you go after for that. It's usually pretty clear. I want to buy a sedan, what have you. We'll pop off to the next slide there, slide 12. Facets. Facets are potentially the coolest thing, and this is what really drove me to improve my SEO in other categories. So facets are attributes of a product that distinguish them and drive individual demand. This is some examples in cars would be the manufacturer, drive type, size, or year. So for example, this manufacturer is brand in most other industries. So you'd say, I want to buy Nike shoes, right? Technically, a facet will actually roll up the entire category hierarchy. So you can get Nike men's clothing. I'm sure they sell some kind of clothing. Nike men's shoes, Nike men's sneakers, right? So it rolls up the whole hierarchy. But there's all sorts of different variations on this. So if we're going to talk about cars, we can talk about, is it BMW who made it? Is it Audi who made it? We can talk about the drive type. Is it all-wheel drive, front-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive? If you do some searches along with this, I know I talk really fast, but if you do some searches along with this, all-wheel drive sedan does definitely get some searches. Mm-hmm. How about BMW all-wheel drive sedan, right? And then you can talk about the size of car, for example. So you can get a compact or mid-size, right? You can even get an all-wheel drive compact sedan, like BMW sedan. I'm sure they have that. We'll see. And then year. Year is always really important in automotive as well. So those variations, I basically, for one, even if we're just talking about sedans, that's about 100 pages. And it's not 100 pages for no reason. It's 100 pages that represent user demand with good search volume in the automotive industry. Show me one brand in the automotive industry that actually targets those things properly. One, right? They don't. They rely on their distributors to do their own marketing without giving them any kind of help from the brand. It's nuts. And then like electric cars, right? Tesla doesn't even have a page talking about electric cars. BMW doesn't have come on, what a joke, right? It's really bad. So talking about that, facets are really cool. The big thing with facets is identifying what facets are important, but then also making sure they get indexed properly. Because I don't know if by default Shopify does this. I'd have to dig into that a little bit more. Maybe you guys can enlighten me after this. But making sure that you dig through your facets and say, are brands indexable? And some of the other facets, some of the other things you'll search for, you actually don't want to index. They don't have any search volume, or they don't have enough, and they steal too much value from the rest of your site. Good example of not indexing facets properly is Canadian Tire right now, and you guys probably have not heard of Canadian Tire, but they're a big brand in Canada. We care. But they don't index any of the brands, so they'll never rank for
so if
Ford
you're searching for like a Dunlop tire or Michelin or Pirelli,
Canadian Tire will not rank, and it's literally just a technical SEO distinction. It's one little distinction, and if they change it, they'll make at least a couple $100,000. I think when I did the analysis, it was $400,000 a year minimum.
Yeah.
All right, let's pop to the next slide there, slide 13. So I don't want to talk too much about product pages because I think those are pretty clear. The one thing I would like to mention about product pages, and this technically applies to any static page, any service page, any page where you want to rank for bottom of funnel keyword especially. Google's not the most recent set, but the set before that of Search Rater's guidelines mentioned supplementary content. And they define supplementary content as anything that helps the user understand the buying intent a little bit more. So, for example, your primary keyword will target the task completion, So it'll be, I want to buy Nike shoes. Okay, great. I want to buy Nike shoes. So the page would better let you buy Nike shoes. I have a couple brands I want to call out for not doing that properly, but I won't. And then you've got
go on. That's you got to do the fun stuff.
Yeah.
The last hour, the final 27 minutes. Come on.
Yeah. But so the side stuff on that would be supplementary content. So yeah, okay, you've got a buy button, you've got an add to cart button, that's fantastic. But what about some of the additional stuff? And most people do a little bit of this. They've got reviews, right? They've got product specifications. They've got some of that stuff, which is, it helps you understand your goal. But Amazon does something really fantastic. And this is actually, I think this is my favorite 2017. I know they've been doing this for forever, but I saw it in 2017 and I was very impressed, was this Q&A style content. So they let you ask a question about a product. And what Amazon does is they email out the last couple people who bought the product. And when I say couple, it's probably last like 10, maybe 50 even people who bought the product until they get an answer. So they're re-engaging all those people with Amazon. They're asking them for their opinion, which if you do any kind of conversation skill stuff, like people love that. Like, ask me for my opinion. Tell me about myself, right? So you're doing that with your audience. And then you also post that on the site. It's user-generated content that asks the question about the product and then answers it. Is it CSA approved? How long is the power cord? All that kind of stuff adds a lot of value. And Amazon didn't even have to do any work. That's all automated. Right? So you can do a lot of cool things with product pages. Something else I would definitely look at is when I talk about keyword frequency on a page, I don't get into like the old school shenanigans like must be 17 or ridiculous stuff like that. I just say it needs to be on the page at least once, and I'm happy with it. But I have a couple rules of what it means to have a page or a keyword on a page at least once. For product pages, you'll see a heading that says reviews, right? It doesn't say Nike something something reviews. It just says reviews. And if you look for the name of the product anywhere around that, it's usually 60 characters ahead or after that. It's not actually in line with reviews anywhere. So what if we could dynamically include the word, like the name of the product, next to reviews, next to specifications, next to features, and move them closer together? So some things that are technically just really, really basic SEO that we would consider doing on an e-commerce platform and kind of making it more effective there. Obviously with UX in mind. You wouldn't want it to look ridiculous. Cool. So let's pop off to the next slide there, number 14.
Crazy cool.
Crazy cool, innovative. You can tell I came up with this kind of late at night. But yeah, so this is I know I wanted to get into like some of the implementation issues and that kind of stuff that we get into with like enterprises and all that kind of stuff, like how to handle approval flows and stuff like that. But I feel like that's maybe more boring than doing crazy cool, innovative stuff. So let's whip through that, keep you guys awake, make sure the world doesn't end. We can pop off.
This is the kind of fast-paced presentation we needed, to be honest. Keep the slides coming, man.
Yeah, get everyone awake, right? So we're going to be on slide 15. So I didn't know anyone actually did this. I've been talking to one of my good friends about getting them to do this for their enterprise e-commerce and e-commerce platform. But the idea is best shoes, right? Now, I tend to avoid, when I'm doing normal research for any other niche, you know, like let's say you're doing like a therapist or you're doing like a real estate industry or anything like that, I tend not to actually add the words best to my keyword research because there's an infinite variation on like these superlatives that you could add in. So why? Like, why bother? It's too much work. I'm so lazy. They all have the same kind of distribution. I'm going to put the word best somewhere on the page just because it's fun and to piss off legal. You know, like we'll do that eventually.
You're making a false claim.
Yeah, it depends on the niche. I should definitely say, like, I know there's niches where you can't.
Well, it depends where the best is. If you put the best next to something a little bit unrelated.
Oh yeah. There you go. Yeah. Hey, we're the best. We have the best customer service.
Some people have said we give the best cookie in the waiting room.
We give the best cookies in the waiting room. I like that. I should actually use that. You can tell we've been doing this for too long. That we had a client in the Viagra niche once, so you know the kind of fun that you have to. What you're not allowed to say. Well, shout out to one of my my clients right now, Get Maple. They're an online doctor, and God forbid you do anything in medicine on AdWords or online. And they do it really well. And it's not like a shop to get everyone approved for marijuana licenses or whatever. Like it's a real business. They do real cool stuff. But yeah, God forbid you use the word, like you use a superlative. God forbid you want to compete in AdWords, whatever, in the medical space. It's nuts. But yeah, so what about the actual user intent when someone types in best shoes? Best whatever, right? It's actually anytime that one of the major reasons I stopped using superlatives as primary keywords was because anytime I did the actual search, what Google would show was a list of results. The best doctor doesn't give you one doctor. It usually gives you the top 20 doctors in your area, right? So you're like, okay, if I want to see lists of things, e-commerce is really where we're at. If we want to leverage our data, e-commerce is really where we're at. But you can't rank for, like on a normal shoes page, you tend not to try to rank for best something because it's not really what the page is about. The page is about just shoes generically. So what about building actual pages targeted at the best shoes, right? And you can do that. You've got big data. That's the point of big data. That's why we do this, right? So we can build that category out. So I did a search for this. I can't remember what I searched for exactly, best men's shoes or something like that, and I pulled up the Amazon page, and it is a targeted page that has the word best in the URL. So I've got the URL underneath there. It says best sellers men's shoes. These are the shoes that sold the most. And then on the next slide, slide 16, I have the Ahrefs ranking report in the US for this. So this page ranks for best casual shoes for men, best men's casual shoes. I didn't sort this, I didn't filter it. This is literally what the page ranks for highest. So clearly it's a pretty good good page, good result, good strategy. Why are we not stealing this, right? Why does every e-commerce company not do something like this? If we pop over to slide 17, we've actually got something similar. What about best category year? So again, like I'm not making this shit up. I Googled best shoes 2018, and I got this Run Repeat website, which I'm not a runner. I don't know why I'm talking about Nike shoes. I'm not even sure what brand of shoes I have, to be honest with you. But these are the best shoes in 2018, in January 2018 even, to be more specific. But you could actually build this out over time. You could actually give us a really cool set of pages that say best shoes 2017, best shoes 2016, and maybe pick out some cool historic brands that you still sell, or like top rating pages. You could even use this for PR, like, you know, listening to Ellie and Lexi, building this kind of stuff out. You can use all this big data to generate stuff to help with PR. You don't need to let this team, this content team, write out tons of gibberish off of no data. You can say, here's some really cool stuff. We can give you the last 10 years of historic rankings for shoes and the movements and maybe what that means about the shoe industry, right? And I've got on the slide after that, slide 18, the rankings for that page for Run Repeat. And, you know, underneath there, they got best running shoes 2017 at the position number 4. But I mean, it shows that they're catching up, right? They've got this every year. They update the year, and literally all they do is they say, okay, well, what are the best shoes this year, right? And they just use the data. It's all automated. It's not like some person every year has to take a bunch of effort to make sure this is happening. It's just it just happens. It's just fantastic. Slides after that, so slide 19, it's StockX. And they've got most popular. So this is actually something you could technically do with filters. So it's a different type of page technically. But let's say you go to Amazon and you filter whatever results you're on, like say T-shirts, by price, right? So you could say like luxury something. You could potentially rank for luxury something if you have that sort done, or cheapest something, right? Or most most affordable running shoes if you sort by price lowest to highest. You could technically index that page and dynamically just say, you know what, these are the cheapest or whatever style of page. And that's, again, it's all automated. It's all done like that. So what about most popular? And this is literally just a page that's sorted by most popular, but indexed. Right? So most popular shoes is indexed.
And it's relatively arbitrary what's actually the most popular.
Well, I mean, they can do this based off of data, right? Most popular is not just like a generic filter. Most e-commerce stores will have incredible data behind what's going on with their products. And they'll tell you, like, they can easily tell you these are our most popular products. These are the products we sell the most because it feeds back into the system. That's why they show the products so highly, right? So it's like, okay, here you go. This is most popular. And now we rank for it. And we didn't do any additional work, right? So I love that kind of stuff. And again, the next slide there, slide 20, is the same thing. It's all the rankings, most popular sneakers, most popular shoes, like this isn't like an arbitrary thing. This isn't like something that doesn't serve a user intent. It's pretty fantastic. The next slide there, slide 21, I didn't want to do all the research into this because I'm boring. But what about trends? Like shoe trends 2018, fashion trends 2018, handbag trends 2018, right? I've been working a lot with the luxury fashion industry, which is unfortunate because, as you can probably tell, I'm not the most fashionable person in the world. But I flew out to Montreal to do a little bit of work with Essence and Garage Dynamite a while ago. And they're big into trends. And their marketing teams will actually talk to you about trends in this industry and how do we get ahead of that and how do we represent that. And frequently, Essence for sure has a whole lot of really great articles on fashion trends and designers and working with all of those groups. But they have to manually write the content, and it's expensive. I mean, if you get all this stuff done on a regular basis and try to keep up with trends, it gets really expensive. But you can actually rank for this dynamically. What are the trends in 2018? You could actually say like this, like based on your data, this style of shoe or whatever is becoming more popular. It's hot, right? So you could rank for category trends 2018 or newest in the category. A lot of categories, like let's say we're in luxury fashion, we want to do like handbags or styles of shoes and footwear, luxury sandals, whatever. Newest becomes a really valuable term as well. What was just released? New releases, right? Like you see people, I don't know if this is a thing out where you are, and it's really not a thing for me. So I'm still not entirely behind it. I don't understand it, but people will wait in line for the newest pair of shoes, newest pair of sneakers. Right, I think that's great. More power to them, and I'm really happy that they're so passionate about something. I couldn't wait in line for that though.
No.
We had a taxi driver in Vegas ask me if I could pick up some shoes from London that they don't sell in the US and bring them over for him next time, and he would give me $500 for a pair of $80 shoes.
Oh man, and
because they're not sold in the US.
And they're so passionate about it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I wish I was that passionate about. I mean, I'm that passionate about SEO.
Not shoes, surely. I mean.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then another thing for dynamic pages that would be really cool to think about, and House used to do this. So I don't know what happened. They don't do it anymore. But whoever was responsible for House, maybe like three or 4 years ago. So it's HOUZZ. What they did was they would index certain search pages. So I think what they did, and House was, I guess it's like an interior design. I actually don't know what they do. I found it doing research for one of my clients. But they do some like interior design stuff. They've got all sorts of great lifestyle shots of their products and all kind of stuff. I guess it is to some extent e-commerce. Maybe someone in the chat can enlighten us. But when you do a search for things like organic bedroom set or something like that, something ridiculous, like ridiculously specific like that, House would show up. And they had a perfectly optimized search page. But they didn't index all of their search pages. So if you made a new search, that page would be canonicalized to the default /search page. But I think what they were doing was they were looking at all the searches that came through their internal search tool. And if I was doing it this way, I would look at all the searches that came in through my internal search tool. Then I would look at, I would make sure that those pages didn't actually get associated to an existing page that's better fit for this than a search result. So like a product page or a class page, category page, what have you, facet page. And if it didn't have an association to one of those, I would compare it to the Google Keyword Planner API or any kind of search volume kind of listing and say, okay, Keyword Planner says that this has a ton of searches. We do return results for this. Let's index this page and link to it somehow internally, right? Dynamically. So maybe you index the top 5% of your search pages, doing it this way, and you can go over and audit it over time. Maybe that's something that you look at on a regular basis. But now, if you've optimized your search page for the users, and it works pretty much just like a category page, you're basically just dynamically improving and growing your site based off of what your users want and based off of what the market, what people are looking for on Google. So there's so many cool things that you can do with e-commerce. But I want to wrap this up really quick, so let's pop off to the next slide. I want everyone to donate. I did. I donated pretty much right when I popped in here. So St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, really great charity. What are we at right now?
Just over 5,000, I think.
Just over 5. That's pretty good. I mean, when I popped in, I think we had a.
Wow! Thank you so much. The latest people, we've got Michael, Trevor, Anonymous, and Anonymous. So a couple. I think Beth, Don, Dave. Yeah, we've had a few fly in this last. Yeah, this has been a popular session. Good work on the donations.
Excellent. Thanks, guys. That's awesome. Yeah. You guys did really great. And we've also got the merch, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, buy some mugs. The hoodies have been the most popular item. So if it's cold where you are, like it seems to be in a lot of places right now in the US, grab a hoodie. All the money goes straight from Teespring, less the cost, obviously, of making it to the charity. So it's instantly sent. So grab some merch as well. And if you're watching it on replay, please still donate. We'll be keeping this open till our next event. So keep on donating. The more we can hit the target by next year, that'd be amazing. It's a shame we haven't hit it today, but it was our first time running through. So pretty exciting that we've raised. Including the merch, we must be well into the mid to high 5,000. So pretty pleasing first run.
Yeah, I'm really impressed. I'm impressed that you guys are still conscious and speaking.
Yeah, I probably relaxed a little bit too early with 2 hours to go, and I started knocking the wine down. I should have stuck to the tea strategy, but I felt like celebrating 2 hours to go because 7 hours to go. I said to Garrett, I don't know how I'm going to make this 7 hours.
It's been a long day, man.
Yeah, I've been awake like 32 hours now or something ridiculous.
Oh.
Well, I'm excited.
Thank you so much to everyone who's stayed with us to the end. Jason and BB have been here for almost all of it. Andrew's been
know what to say. It's awesome.
Yeah, well, we got 10 minutes to kill, so
yeah. Are there any questions?
Let's do some Q&A. There must be some Q&A because e-commerce has come up a few times earlier, so hopefully some of the people who are interested are still around to get some questions in.
How do you feel about on Shopify not being able to edit your robots.txt files, your htaccess files, and being able to go after that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so I mean, I think a lot of the mistakes that people make with robots.txt are actually over editing with it. I think a website that does not have a clearly defined robots.txt file is better than one that was optimized by someone who's like a junior SEO or not especially savvy. And you have to keep up with the industry trends even to make sure that your robots.txt file is done properly. So that doesn't bother me at all. A good example of that actually is, let's say you one of the guidances that SEOs provided back when Wikidfire was a big deal was let's not let Google look at our CSS or JavaScript or images. That's really exciting because how do you think Google knows that your site is responsive? Right? They look at media queries. So if you hide all the media queries from Google, they don't know your site is responsive. They think your site is shit for mobile. Congratulations, you shot yourself in the foot. What's the point?
Well, that didn't matter back in the Wikidfire days, though. So
that's true. That's true.
It was good advice at the time. Stuff's just moved on now with these magic little computers we carry around now instead of a phone.
That's fair. Yeah, but I mean, the only thing I would really make sure, like, I would really be consider urgently important in robots is the sitemap. And as far as I know, the sitemap is included by default in Shopify, in the robots.txt for Shopify. So I'm okay with that. I think another thing too is robots.txt gives you a false sense of security for indexation. The only way to, if you put an instruction to disallow a directory, say, in robots.txt. What that means is do not crawl that directory again.
Mm-hmm.
So if you crawled it accidentally, or you crawled it a while ago, or you crawled whatever, it's not going to no index those pages. It's not going to pop them out of the index. So the only way to make sure a page does not get indexed is by applying the no index tag to it in MetaRobots. So it gives you this false sense of security, a lot of the stuff that you do in robots. And I just, in a lot of situations, you don't really have to worry about that. I'm not too worried about it.
Andrew asked the same question, but about server logs, which is not surprising given his topic of expertise for today's show. So,
well, I mean, here's the thing: of all the people who listen to that segment, how many of you actually look at your server logs?
Well, we're all going to look for the first time when we wake up again.
Yeah. Yeah, right. I mean, I actually don't do a lot with my server logs. I know that's kind of a shame on me thing. I think for the people who are really concerned about that, maybe there's a workaround for you. But it doesn't really bother me too much. The biggest thing about Shopify is if you want an incredibly custom solution and you want to build it yourself, you pay for it in development time. You pay for it. Of course, Tyler does. God damn it! If you want a perfectly customized solution, you pay for it in developer time. You pay for it in the lack of pluggability. You pay for it in years down the road where you realize, what, I wish I'd built it this way.
Right.
But I think a lot of people, especially the people watching this, they just want an e-commerce site that is more or less optimized for SEO, and that's what Shopify will give you out of the box. It's an out of the box solution. Right. If you want to get a little bit more customized, then maybe use like a WordPress, or maybe use like a, what have you. There's lots of other solutions to Shopify, but for 99% of the people who would ever build it, I think Shopify is a great solution. If you don't have to think about SEO, that's probably the best solution for a lot of these people.
Yeah. So with the candle site, we're doing this case study about, or I guess I'm doing it, where I've never done drop shipping, and we're going to be doing drop shipping some candles. So I've never used Shopify. I'm like, cool. I don't have world of expertise in e-commerce. Shopify seems like a solution I'm happy to pay $30 a month for. Get all the products in there like I normally would, and let's in WooCommerce or something. Get some content on the homepage that's not fantastic, but should rank for some really long tail shit. And then we do some link baits and build links to them over a few months to the point where it should definitely stick and gain some traction. And after a couple months go by, we're kind of sitting down, the group of us, and we're like, what the hell? Nothing is stuck. It won't rank for shit. Absolutely nothing. Like, did it get sandboxed? Obviously, our opinion, the links are fucking fantastic. The content is good where it should be ranking for this obscure long tail shit that we wrote it for. Nothing just sticks. So then I was looking in the robots.txt file, and I asked someone that I thought knew more than me, and he's like, well, it's like that's blocking the product pages from being indexed. I'm like, okay. So then I went and Google and just Googled the URL for it, see if it was indexed, and it wasn't there. I'm like, well, shit. At the time the site had been up for 3 weeks. Should have been indexed by then, some links had been built to it, and the links were indexed from like at least an Ahrefs or whatever. So I get on Shopify Live support. I'm like, yeah, I just have some concerns about maybe these pages aren't being indexed, and it's not my expertise. And like, the person is just like, yeah, it should all be good to go. Just give Google some time, and the pages eventually got indexed after like about 90 days or something. And so I don't know if it's just something like that at this point, but she's like, this is a platform for a lot of people that don't know what they're doing, so it's in everyone's best interest that you're not allowed to touch it, which I can agree with.
Yeah, there's a big red button.
Yeah,
yeah. Like, don't touch it, you monkeys.
Yeah. This is
one of the things is there is a lot of concern around stuff like that with people who don't necessarily understand how one part of the technical SEO piece works, where you go, something is not working. There has to be a solution to this. And I get a lot of my clients will come to me with this stuff too, where they say, why are we not growing 200% year over year or whatever? And they're like, there has to be a solution. Something's not working. We need to change things up. And it's like, you made millions more dollars last year than you did than the year before that. Like, chill, but in some situations it's just a matter of, like the way your site architecture is maybe filled out doesn't get it indexed or what have you. But if you can see one product page that's indexed, and you could just do a site search for that. If you could see one product page that is indexed, that means that usually the majority of your product pages, or almost all of your product pages, should be indexable. But usually when I look at indexation, some of the things I will be concerned about is I immediately check if anything is cached. If anything is cached, then the page is indexable. It is indexable to Google. Then I'll check if it is not indexed to figure out why it might not be indexed. So I'm working briefly with Allstate right now, actually, on some indexation concerns. But one of the issues would be, say, canonicals. Are you canonicalizing the page away? So Canadian Tire canonicalizes all of its facet pages away. They're not indexable. They're canonicalized to a different page. So none of those facets are indexable to Google. Are you doing some cloaking, for example? Do you redirect all traffic from the States to some other page? Because a lot of, like, Googlebot crawls frequently from California. Actually, maybe Andrew can bring this up, but when I last checked, Googlebot would only crawl really from California. So if you redirected all traffic from the States to some other domain, that can cause you some issues as well. The biggest one, though, is internal linking issues. So some people will use a different internal linking structure. With Allstate, what they're doing is they have a drop-down menu for different cities. So if you're in like Chicago or whatever, there's a drop-down. You can select Chicago and click go. That's not a link. It's not a real link. So of course the Chicago page is not indexed, right? So you have to somehow make sure that that stuff is working out effectively. Yeah, Andrew says it's correct that they search out of the States. So that's usually not a best solution anyway. You tend not to want to redirect people based off of their geo-IP. You can do a couple fancy things with like 302s and remembering where someone came from, but you can't just by default, no, you're from the States, we're going to redirect you away. So indexation usually has a lot of potential issues, but if you kind of got a handle on some of that stuff, and it's only maybe 3 or 4 major issues that can cause it. Once you get a handle on that, you check those 3 or 4 things, you go, no, this page should be indexable. So it shouldn't be black magic anyway.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
Cool. It's 10:01, or I guess 9:01 there. I'm going to hand it back to you guys.
All right. Awesome.
3:01 in the afternoon here. Bedtime.
All right. Well, thanks so much for your time. Do you want me to drop off? Or?
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, that was good.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, have a good one, man.
Last chance to